Hello and welcome to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. My name is Natalie Himmelrich. Welcome to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. In today's episode and next episodes, we're going to explore the power of language and metaphors to help us navigate through life's most challenging moments. I'm going to choose a couple of metaphors that are often used in relation to grief and trauma, and we're looking at how these perspectives can help you navigate your loss and your trauma. So as I said, I've chosen 10 of the most used metaphors, those that are used a lot of the time. So I'm going to summarize them today at the beginning, and then we're going to look at each one separately and next time as well. So one often used is grief as an ocean. So imagine grief is like an ocean, vast and overwhelming with waves and varying intensity that can suddenly surge or recede unexpectedly. The second metaphor that is often used is the darkness of grief. It might often be seen as traversing a dark tunnel where the way forward feels uncertain and there's a light at the end sometimes, although faint, and it promises eventually clarity or hope. Another one which is very often used is grief as a journey. So experiencing grief is often described as a journey signifying a path one must travel, complete with detours, obstacles, and moments of profound discovery. In that, I have a bit of a caveat because a journey sounds like there's an end to it, and we would have to define what would that look like, the end of grief. The next one often used is the weight of grief, because we often refer to as grief feeling like carrying a heavy burden, like an invisible load that impacts daily life, which might gradually lighten as the healing progresses. You might have seen my metaphor using the grief crystal, which I'll link in the show notes. Then the fifth metaphor I've chosen is the seasons of grief. Grief is frequently compared to changing seasons with each phase, like winter, spring, summer, fall, representing different emotional states and the cyclical nature of healing. The next one is the wound of grief. It's often likened to a wound that, while initially raw and painful, gradually heals over time, but leaving a scar that serves as a reminder of loss and resilience. Then the seventh metaphor is one that might have been less used or you might not have heard. It's the dance of grief. Grief can be envisioned as a dance characterized by movements that are sometimes smooth and at other times awkward, reflecting the unpredictable rhythm of human emotions. Then the eighth metaphor is grief as a cake. You can imagine grief as a cake with different layers or different pieces. So each layer or piece represents a different emotions and the stages of grief, maybe those reflecting Elizabeth Kubler's process from sadness to anger, acceptance and hope, or meaning, imagining that as one might savor or struggle through each of the layers or pieces of the cake, also understanding that individuals navigate these layers uniquely and at their own pace. One that I most recently came across is the grief as a language. And I really like that. So it's about learning to live with grief can be compared to learning a new language. At first it feels foreign and challenging to understand, but with time you become more fluent, and the aim is to become fluent. And this new language allows you to express your deeper emotions and connect with others who also speak the same language of loss. And then the last one, which is one that I most often use, is grief as a foreign country. So I imagine that once you experience a significant loss, you are visiting a foreign country, one that you are very unfamiliar with, and it's disorienting. You had never actually wanted to visit that country, but you're here and you have no choice than to be here. The customs and landscapes, even the simplest activities seem strange and challenging. And with time, depending on how you go about learning to understand this country, you will start to get your bearings and learn the lay of the land, find your way. And often with the help of newfound companions who also understand your journey. So this is part 2 of Grief Myth. And if you haven't listened to the first 5, go back to episode number 81 and start there. because metaphors can play a vital role in understanding and expressing the myriad feelings associated with grief, offering a perspective and also solace and the sense of shared experience. The sixth grief metaphor that we're going to look at this week is the wound of grief. And much like a physical wound, it is initially raw and excruciating, and you might feel acute, almost unbearable pain, as if you're fundamentally altered by the depth of your loss. And this phase is often marked by a profound sense of vulnerability and exposure, where the pain feels unrelenting and fresh, much like a searing sting of an open wound. So over time, with the right care and attention, the wound begins to heal. This doesn't mean that the pain vanishes overnight, rather it starts to change form, and its initial sharpness may dull into persistent ache, a reminder that the wound is still there, but it is healing and it leaves a scar. But just as the physical wound requires dressing, antiseptics, and time to mend, so does this emotional wound of grief. It entails nurturing yourself, seeking support, and giving yourself permission to rest and recuperate. This is also the place to mention something about the often heard metaphor of time heals old wound, and that is really unhelpful to be mentioned in relation to grief, because as we can see here, the wound of grief doesn't just heal with time, it actually progresses, and the wound may leave a scar, but only with what we're doing within this time. Because the scar is a testament to your resilience and the love you've experienced. It signifies that while the pain has subsided, the experience of loss has left a permanent mark in your life. And this scar can be seen as a reminder of your strengths and capacity to overcome pain. It's also a visible trace of an invisible journey, encapsulating the emotions, memories, growth that have stemmed from your grief. To me, living with these scars means acknowledging my past while also recognizing my progress. It's a symbol of survival, showing that I have endured something deeply painful and have come to where I am now. For me, it's important to honor those scars, for they are not just indicators of pain, but also of healing and perseverance, of integrating the loss into my life. So your scars are part of your story, reflecting both the wounds that you've encountered and also the incredible strength that you've shown in allowing them to heal. So there's a couple of benefits I can see with the wound of grief metaphor. First of all, it gives us concrete imagery, like we can relate to a wound very easily and understand what it takes to heal. Different wounds take different healing, different mending, but also the validation of the pain. It acknowledges the intense pain of grief, validating also the raw stage of grief and the visceral experience of those grieving. Again, the healing process, it emphasizes that like a physical wound, it requires care, time, and the right conditions to heal, encouraging a proactive approach to self-care. It's also the symbol of resilience, because the scar left by the wound represents resilience to me and survival, and recognizing that while grief changes us, it also demonstrates our capacity to endure and heal. The last benefit that I see is empowerment. To me, it empowers individuals to highlight their strengths and ability to recover, which can foster a sense of agency and self-compassion. The next one is the dance of grief. I think the dance of grief metaphor beautifully captures the fluidity and unpredictability of your emotions during difficult times. I can imagine grief as a dance on an ever-changing stage, where the choreography is unpredictable and the music shifts without warning. Some days your movements might be graceful and synchronized with the rhythm of life, allowing you to glide through your days with a sense of fluidity and acceptance. On other days, however, you might feel a profound connection to emotions, navigating them with ease and finding moments of solace and understanding. However, there's also days when the dance is completely awkward and difficult. Maybe the rhythm seems erratic or the movements clumsy and you step on your own toes. During these times, you might feel out of sync with the world around you. And these challenges or these challenging days are a part of the grieving process, similar to the ocean reflecting a natural ebb and flow of the human emotions. It's important to recognize that this dance is uniquely yours. There's no right or wrong way to move through it. There's only your way. I see the beauty of the dance of grief in its ability to remind us that it's okay to move at our own pace, to embrace the awkward moments as much as the graceful ones. As you continue to dance with your grief, you may find that over time you become more attuned to the changing rhythms and you learn to anticipate the shifts in the music. And this growing awareness allows you to navigate your emotions with greater confidence and compassion for yourself. You may even discover that within the dance there are moments of unexpected beauty and strength, where you're able to express your deepest feelings and honor your experiences. There's one question that I ask in the rapid fire questions to all my guests, which is, if there were one thing that you wouldn't want to miss, what would it be? And this question leads into those kind of post-traumatic growth experiences. So what are the benefits of the dance of metaphor? First of all, I see it as a permission for imperfection, which is especially important for me as a perfectionist, because by comparing grief to a dance with both graceful and awkward movements, it normalizes the imperfection in the grieving process. It also allows for flexibility and fluidity. A dance is fluid and ever-changing in nature, and so is grief, allowing individuals to understand and accept the dynamic range of their emotions. A dance also encourages movement, continual movement and engagement with emotions, even when the steps feel difficult or uncertain. It also recognizes individuality. Each person's dance with grief is unique, affirming the personal nature of the grieving process. And I hope that this metaphor also celebrates the strength and resilience it requires to keep moving, honoring each individual's journey through grief. Grief as a cake. I use this imagery as a form of a multi-layered cake, or as a cake with different slices, to describe the emotional experiences. I came to this metaphor as I was trying to use Elizabeth Kubler-Ross material to show people that the layers or the different emotions, and not just those 5 stages, but the different emotions that are contained in the grieving experience, come again and again, not just once. But you can imagine that each layer represents different stages or feelings, as I said, from anger, sadness, acceptance, hope, and even the stage recently coined by David Kessler, meaning. Just as you would savor and struggle through each of the layers, you will navigate these emotions at your own pace. There's no right or wrong way, just your way. And you can even imagine the process of baking this cake. Initial mixing of ingredients symbolizes the raw, unfiltered emotions you experience at the onset of grief. Also, different cakes have different ingredients, so a person's grief is a different recipe than the other person's grief. And as we blend those ingredients together, they can feel chaotic and overwhelming, much like the early days of coping with loss. As the cake bakes in this imagery, it undergoes a transformation in the oven's heat, akin to the way your emotions are shaped by the passage of time and reflection. The layers rise and settle, resembling the way you go through various phases of grief. And once baked, the cake is assembled layer by layer, each slice revealing different textures and flavors, much like how the different stages of grief present varying challenges and insights. We could then go on by eating through the cake, which might be another journey, or decorating the cake, but you can go on with this metaphor if it speaks to you. But what are the benefits of the grief as a cake metaphor? I think that it shows the layered complexity of grief, showing that it consists of multiple ways, stages, layers, versions, each with its own challenges and flavors. It also allows permission to experience, I think, the individual to savor or struggle through each layer in their own pace without judgment, in their own way. It also allows a process-oriented view, like with the baking of the cake, the eating, the decorating. That can help as well. And also the personalization, like as I said, each cake has a different recipe for each person. Grief is felt, experienced, expressed in a different way. One of my most recent finds, as I said, was grief as a language speaks to me, speaks a lot to me. And it's in this process because I'm also a language teacher. But this process of becoming fluent in your own grief, like you would in a language, is actually the aim. So initially it feels foreign and incomprehensible, much like trying to decipher a language with an entirely different script or syntax. And the unfamiliar words and phrases symbolize the different emotions and thoughts that overwhelm you, making it difficult to articulate what you're feeling. And over time, however, you learn to understand and interpret these emotions, much as you would learn vocabulary and grammar rules. As you become more proficient, you find that you can express your emotions more clearly and connect to others who understand the language of loss too. And this newfound fluency can bring comfort and connection, allowing you to share your experience and find solidarity with others who are going through grief as well. Just as learning a new language enriches your world, it opens up new ways of understanding. Becoming fluent in the language of grief can also deepen your emotional insight and resilience. Ultimately, learning the language of grief is a journey of self-discovery and healing. How you learn the language and how deep you go into the depth of the understanding of the language is up to you. But it will allow you to honor your emotions, connect with others, and find a sense of peace amidst the complexity of loss. This fluency enables you to navigate your grief with greater compassion, understanding, and turning a seemingly incomprehensible experience into one that can be articulated, shared, and maybe even embraced. So to me, there are many benefits in grief as a language. So for example, the learning curve, it acknowledges that by engaging with it, you increase your understanding and you're more able to articulate grief, which is a learning process, validating the initial challenges and the gradual progress. It's also a communication tool. It emphasizes the importance of finding words to express grief, fostering better communication and connection with others. A language is also a shared experience. It allows for deeper connection with others who understand this language, but also for those who might not yet speak this language. Sooner or later they will. So it's a good gift for everyone. Also, it suggests that the language of grief evolves over time, reflecting the ongoing nature of personal growth and emotional insight. And last but not least, it has the benefit of empathy and insight, because mastering this language enriches emotional insight and empathy, enabling more nuanced and compassionate interactions with others who are also grieving. And the last one in this series, which I like very much as well, is grief being seen as a foreign country. And I use that in my teachings, also with my clients. I'm painting the picture of you needing to visit a country that you never wanted to visit, that you were actually not interested in to go, but alas, you're there and you're there to stay. Grief as a foreign country paints a vivid and evocative picture of navigating an unfamiliar land. Upon arrival, everything feels disorienting and challenging. The terrain is alien, the customs bewildering, and the very air seems thick with a sense of confusion and sadness, and the only wish you have is to go back, but you can't. As you tentatively take your first steps in this new country, every aspect of it seems to emphasize your sense of loss and displacement. And even though you might feel profoundly alone at the beginning, you begin to see and feel that you are actually not. The language is incomprehensible. The maps provide little guidance, and there's familiar landmarks that you usually know are nowhere to be found. But yet as time progresses, you begin to gradually process and acclimate. Just like in the language metaphor, you start to learn this language of this land and recognize words and phrases and resonate with the experience of being in that place. Ultimately, grief as a foreign country serves as a powerful metaphor for the transformation and adaptation that comes with experiencing loss. It captures the profound disorientation and the gradual acclimatization that defines the grieving process. Through time, patience, and connection with others, you will learn to navigate this new land, finding moments of peace and understanding within its borders. This metaphor reminds us that although grief may thrust us into an unfamiliar place, one that we never wanted to visit, it is within our capacity to find our bearings, embrace our new reality, and discover a way to live more fully within. Let's have a look at the benefits of grief as a foreign country. So first of all, like in any place you go, you need to gradually acclimatize. Over time, individuals can acclimate to their new emotional landscape, if they so choose to, which provides hope for eventual familiarity, comfort. It also underscores the importance of encountering fellow travelers, fostering a sense of community and mutual support among those who are grieving. Even though you feel completely alone at the beginning, you realize that many others have experienced it too. Also, the metaphor helps individuals integrate their grief into the broader life experience, finding ways to live fully within their new reality. From beginning, when you have to just acknowledge your disorientation, it validates the profound sense of disorientation and alienation that often accompanies grief at the beginning in the raw stage, making individuals feel understood in their confusion. So I hope that each of these metaphors has offered a unique lens through which we can understand and live with our grief. They remind us that while our experiences are deeply personal, we are not alone. And I hope that by embracing these perspectives, you too can find hope and resilience, and ultimately helping you to integrate your loss back into your life. Because together, we can create a supportive community where grief is understood and embraced. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe and share with others who might benefit too. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to How to Deal with Grief and Trauma. If you'd like to be updated on future episodes, please subscribe to my newsletter on nataliehimmelrich.com. If you need grief support, please contact me for a 30 minutes free discovery session. How to Deal with Grief and Trauma is produced and edited by me, Natalie Himmelrich. To support this podcast, please rate, review, and subscribe to or follow the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you. And remember to keep breathing. I promise it will get easier.